It was mid-January, and the bitter cold of the Siberian winter was penetrating the deep taiga forests near the town of Nizhnaya Tunguska. Howling winds whipped through the bare, twisted trees, bringing with them an eerie cold that seemed to penetrate to the bone. Alexei Kozlov, a young and ambitious forestry worker, was assigned to lead a small team that traveled deep into the forest to check out a remote logging outpost. He had traveled there many times before, but on this day he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. As the truck rumbled down the winding snow-covered road, Alexei looked out the window at the endless sea of dark, tall pines. There was something unsettling, as if the forest itself was watching their every move. He tried to push away this unsettling feeling, reminding himself that he was just being paranoid. After an hour of tense, silent driving, the truck finally reached a small outpost located in the heart of the forest. Alexei and his team piled outside. There was a deafening silence, and Alexei couldn't help but notice how eerily quiet everything around them was. "Okay, let's get this over with quickly," he said, his breath becoming noticeable in the frosty air. "Lay everything out and check the supplies. Then let's hit the road before dark." The men split up, each heading to their own part of the small complex. Alexei headed toward the main hut, with only his footsteps breaking the silence. As he approached the door, he paused, his hand frozen over the knob. Something was wrong. The door was slightly ajar, and there was no sign of smoke coming from the chimney. Gathering his courage, Alexei pushed the door open and stepped inside. The cabin was dark and cold, the fire in the hearth long since extinguished. He called out, and his voice echoed through the empty room, but there was no answer. A growing sense of dread crawled up his spine. Alexei quickly searched the rest of the huts and found them all deserted. Supplies were fully stocked, but there was no sign of the workers who were supposed to be here. Panic gripped him, and he realized that something terrible had happened. Already about to go outside, Alexei noticed a small piece of paper on the table. With trembling hands, he picked it up and read the hastily scribbled message. "Don't go into the woods. Turn back before it's too late." Alexei's heart raced as he stared at the ominous warning. What could have happened to make the workers abandon their posts so suddenly? And what was so frightening out there in the forest? Alexei hurried outside, desperate to find his team and get them all out of this place as soon as possible. But when he stepped out into the freezing air, he realized with horror that they were nowhere to be found. "Yuri? Dmitri? Where are you?" he called out in a trembling voice. There was no answer, only the eerie howling of the wind in the trees. Alexei began frantically looking around the area. Finally, he noticed footprints going into the forest. Without hesitation, he followed them, driven by fear and determination to find his missing team. As he went deeper into the dark forest, the trees seemed to close in around him, obscuring the pale winter sun. He quickened his step, his boots crunching through the snow, his heart pounding in his chest. After what seemed like an eternity, Alexei finally came upon a horrifying sight. On the snow lay the mutilated remains of his team, their bodies twisted and broken. Alexei let out a strangled cry. His knees buckled under him, and he sank to the ground, his hands shaking. What could have done this? He asked himself, terror and disbelief raging in his mind. Suddenly, a sound came to his ears, a low, hoarse growl that sent a chill down his spine. Alexei turned around, peering into the shadows, and then he saw it. A huge, enormous animal emerged from the trees, its eyes glowing with primal, animal hunger. Alexei's breath caught when he recognized it. It was a Siberian tiger, but unlike any he had ever seen. His fur was stooped and ungroomed, his eyes were wild, and fresh blood dripped from his massive jaws. At that moment, Alexei realized that he was facing a predator he had never encountered before. Without a second's hesitation, Alexei turned and ran, kicking his feet as fast as he could. The creature let out a roar and rushed in pursuit, its powerful paws pounding on the snow-covered ground. Finally, Alexei saw a glimmer of hope, the faint outline of a road ahead. Spewing out adrenaline, He forced himself to run faster, and his legs carried him to the safety of the truck. Barely had he reached the road when he heard a deafening roar behind him. Turning around, he saw the creature leaping through the air, claws outstretched and mouth wide open. Alexei braced himself for the blow, certain that he would be killed. But the blow did not come. In an instant, a bright light appeared, cutting through the darkness and forcing the creature back into the forest. Alexei watched in bewilderment as a truck pulled up beside him, engine rumbling. "Get in!" shouted a voice, and Alexei didn't hesitate. He climbed into the passenger seat and slammed the door shut behind him as the truck sped away, leaving the dark, twisted forest and its monstrous inhabitants far behind. As the truck sped down the road, Alexei sat in stunned silence, his mind racing with the horrors he had witnessed. What was this creature, and how had it become so twisted and savage? And what had caused his team to abandon their post and meet such a horrible fate? The driver, an old forester named Yuri, glanced at Alexei, concern reflected on his face. "You all right, boy?" he asked in a hoarse voice. Alexei swallowed hard, his throat dry. "What was that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yuri shook his head grimly. "That, my friend, is something that should never have been allowed to exist. It is a dark and twisted animal, corrupted by the very wilderness it calls home." Alexei felt a chill run down his spine. "But how? How did this happen?" Yuri sighed, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "It's a long and terrible story that has been passed down from generation to generation. A story of greed and darkness taking root in these woods." Alexei listened with bated breath as Yuri told the horrible story of this region. A story of reckless logging, environmental destruction, and the primordial evil that had awakened and taken root in this forest.